President Barack Obama has called for a 30% reduction in power plant emissions by 2015. The proposal would take a dramatic step toward curbing carbon pollution and would have significant implications for communities of color. Heather McTeer-Toney, Regional Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency's Southeast Region, joins us now from Atlanta. Heather, good to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, Angela. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, how is this 30% cut in carbon emissions? How's that been met? Are people happy about this?
Well, let's first say that this is one of the most remarkable rules that we have seen and will see in our time. President Obama and our administrator, Gina McCarthy, have done an outstanding job in making climate change and a reduction in carbon emissions priority for the United States of America, and particularly how it impacts our communities, I think, is something that we should certainly take note of.
What are the naysayers saying? Are they saying 30% isn't enough? We need 50%. What are you hearing?
Well, it ranges across the United States. Certainly here in the Southeast region, there are varying concerns, but what we find that it's making a huge impact and a difference in technology that's already changing. Most of the power plants that we see today are aging, actually, and a lot of industries and utilities have already started to make differences in technologies. So when we look at how it's really going to impact our communities, we're looking at a reduction overall in health impacts, particularly for minority communities. We're looking at our environmental justice communities. We're looking to see reductions in everything from the cost of health care to the risk and disease that we see with asthma and the associated risks there with our children. So there are a number of positive things that we're seeing, particularly in the Southeast region, that are going to happen as a result of this rule.
I wanted to ask you, is there a certain region in the United States where power plants are basically located? I know that that I grew up in Texas, and I grew up with a close to a power plant, and just all the grossness and the smells and the, this is not good for your body. But is there any region in the United States where this is very focused?
Well, this is something that is cross-cutting across the entire United States of America. Here in the Southeast region, certainly all of our 8 states definitely see some impact from carbon emissions. And when we look at how it's impacting our communities, we see on a regular basis, and I think it's pretty obvious, the increase that we've had with health risks, with asthma, particularly when we're looking at our children. We can actually physically see the impacts of carbon emissions and the effects that it has on climate change. We know that the science tells us that carbon emissions directly impact our climate change, and we have to do something to drastically reduce that. This rule actually impacts this on a very physical level. We're talking about actually reducing carbon emissions by 2030 by 30%. And what's really beautiful about this is each state has a part to play and can help to reduce its own emissions from its own state. So there's no across the board reduction. It's an overall reduction of 30%, but let's say one state only has to reduce by 25%, another state may have to reduce by 35%. Each state can help craft to see how they're going to reduce in order to receive the overall effort.
Yeah, and I think that's very important to note, and I'm glad that you said that each state can choose how they want to best take the 30% and reduce the carbon emissions within their state, because each state is different. Each state has a different scenario.
Yes, absolutely. When we look at our states, there's such a huge difference in our states and the type of power that they actually produce, and that's also varying in each region. So it's particularly important, and I think the administrator did an amazing job of including all of the stakeholders, the states, local communities, environmental groups, federal agencies, bringing really everyone to the table to have a conversation of how best to effectuate this rule. So the period that we're in now is to get and receive comments on those rules so that we can continue to have the conversation and get feedback from people and from all of the stakeholders to know how it's going to best and how we can best improve the environment and reduce carbon emissions in each of the states.
Let's go back to talking about underserved communities, as you've done already, African American communities, Latino communities. What comes first, Heather? The community is already there and the power plant goes up, or the power plant is there and then the community is built around it?
Well, I think we have to deal with what we're looking at existing each and every day right now. What is our reality currently? Currently, we see a number of communities that are impacted negatively. We see a number of environmental justice communities that have come from either way, being built around or being built upon. The ultimate determination that we have to make is, how do we ensure that all communities, regardless of where they're located, regardless of who they are encompassed by, making sure that each and every person has the same right to clean air, to clean water, and to a clean bill of health. And that's what this rule does. It enables us to engage all of these communities and really look at how we can reduce some numbers that have negatively impacted minority communities for generations.
And you know, this is really good because it's going to help the overall health of African American communities and Latino communities that are close to these power plants. And then, Heather, you have coupled with that the Affordable Care Act that will allow people to get the medical attention they need if they have been adversely impacted by these carbon emissions, which I can't imagine that any of us has not been adversely impacted.
Absolutely. When we look at just the number of children that have asthma today, particularly in minority communities, in the African American community, in the Latino community, when you go to a school and you see the number of kids that have asthma pumps, when you look outside on a soccer field or a football field and you see the kids that are on the sidelines that can't play because they're impacted by the emissions in the air, when we look at the amount of money that our families are spending on health care on a regular basis, and then we look at this rule and look at the opportunity that we have to reduce the carbon emissions which directly impact that asthma, that directly impact that health cost, we're looking at saving the lives of our children and making sure that they become healthier adults. I can't see any other way that we are really, a more positive way, something that really makes us all smile and what we can do for our children. This is really an amazing rule. And one of the things we really want to encourage people to do is to comment on it. We want to encourage people to really look and see what this rule does for their communities, because ultimately that's what we're talking about. Over the lifespan of this rule, we're looking at a $90 billion savings in health costs.
That's unbelievable. That number is just staggering. 90 billion. That's the savings for this 30% reduction in carbon emissions to our health, as well as I'm assuming economically.
Absolutely. And when you look at the cost of the rule itself, which is roughly $8 billion, and the savings of 90, you can see where it's clearly not only cost effective, it's something that we have to do for our communities, it's something we have to do for the future of our children.
Heather McTier-Toney with the EPA Southeast region there in Atlanta, thank you so much for joining us today. Good work, EPA. Keep it up.
Thank you.
All right, take care.